willkommen im Tschechischen Zentrum Berlin. Welcome at the Czech Center of Berlin. I'm very happy that you are here tonight, and tonight it's quite a special event as we have the first political discussion. It's a part of a program or a series that we plan, and so you are part of our experiment that we do. We want to see, can we talk about relevant political topics in a very informal way? Do we get enough public? Is the public interested? And so, if you are interested, show it to us, and we will continue. And this will be not the first and last debate, but the first of a row. The row of debate of the series we planned with the Czech political weekly Respect, and I'm very happy to welcome here our moderator of tonight and also our partner of the series of debate, Tomáš Sáka. He's one of the moderators. The other moderator we have tonight, and we are very happy about it, is Karolina Przewodska. She's a Polish journalist, and they both have been here on the Bosch Stipendium in Berlin. That is, I think, teaching. Tomáš will tell you more about the program and about the series that we plan. The topic is 10 years of EU25. This will be the general topic of all debates, and Tomáš and Karolina will also present our guests. So I wish you a nice evening, and then just speak about it.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm happy to welcome you. As Monika already said, this is a kind of experiment, because that's really historically like the first political debate here in Czech Center. And we were thinking for a long time about it, whether we do it, whether the people come. That was the main question since the beginning. So as you see, it was really a good question. But at the end, we decided to do it anyway, because we somehow feel that it's necessary to discuss, it's necessary to talk about this topic, especially in this context of countries like Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, let's say Eastern Europe. So the camera here stands with the clear point. We would like to, or we will take this video, we will publish it on Respect website, where it will definitely reach much larger audience. We are quite happy to have active viewers, at least active viewers, not active people who would come from the Czechs to the Berlin. Just one managed to do this. He sits here, I will introduce him soon. Just maybe to say generally to the guest, I mean, I made it a bit ambitious. I invited, let's say, really interesting guests, and I was hoping that they will be satisfied, despite of the fact it can happen that we are a bit in a club, not a real big hall full of people. But we will do anything for them to feel comfortable. If they need coffee, cookies, I mean, like a nice word or anything, they can just ask us, and we with Karolina will try to make our best. So probably we can start with the introduction. And thank you very much once more, Monika. And I would probably start really with a man who made this journey to join us. 360 kilometers from Prague. He went with a train, as far as I know, with a car. But was it a carbon low car? Okay. Ondřej Liška, the head of Czech Greens, the politician who has quite many experiences in the Czech politics, and who has also quite a fresh experience with the European vote, because he took this role of the leader of this candidate list to the European Parliament. How it worked, we will hear from him, but let me welcome him, Ondřej Liška. Good evening.
And our second guest is Mr. Mr. Christoph Schwennicke, the editor-in-chief of Cicero, very, very successful political monthly magazine of political culture, and also the former deputy editor of the Berlin office of Der Spiegel. Welcome, Mr. Schwennicke. Good evening. And our third guest, very special guest, of course, Janos Togai, the director of the Collegium Hungaricum in Berlin, artist, and the person who can hopefully tell us a bit more about the broader cultural and social perspective of changing Europe. Welcome. Good evening.
Okay. So, what to start with? I would say it's quite clear because we had the European election just 2 days before, and we are all somehow still influenced by this huge event. Maybe in a different way, because it made a different footprint in our countries. In the Czechs we were quite busy with finding some people who would take part in the vote. In Germany there were another strong topics, awaiting maybe some new parties entering the parliament. What happened actually, but much more in the other countries. But we will definitely we would like to start with the European election now. And Mr. Liška could even briefly give us this introduction to what happened, and maybe about his role. So you didn't manage to get into the parliament as far as we get the results now. So what happened?
Good evening again. I'm very pleased to be in such a wonderful panel. Yes, I took the opportunity as a leader of the Czech Green Party, and I was in the primaries. I was elected as the head of the list. I did this because I thought it's very important to show that to break a myth that the European elections are elections of a second order. Well, maybe I did break this myth, but I didn't succeed to get amended. We received almost 4%, 3.8% of the vote, which is not enough. In Germany it would be enough for 2 minutes, I think. But we still have this hurdle of 5% that we try now to get rid of through the Constitutional Court. However, it's a very fresh experience, and after 12 years I yesterday resigned as a head of the party, so I will still be in function for next 2 weeks, but then I leave and become again an ordinary active citizen of green origin, which I'm very much looking forward as well, especially my children. But to my mind, I think if I take the European election that just gone and 10 years perspective of Czech Republic as a member state, I would say it's 2 stories. One is successful and the other one is a failure. The first one is the story of economic integration. The other one is actually a story that is not successful at all. And that is, I would say, a story of a small Central European nation that has become a member of the EU and has seen becoming a member of the EU as an end of itself, but not as an opportunity for the future. A very common saying in the 90s and later on, before we joined the Union, people were saying, let's go back to Europe, this is our place, let's become again part of Europe, meaning Western part of Europe. And then, after we became again member of the EU, and again part of Europe, for many people the job has been done. There was nothing left to strive for, and that is a completely wrong position. And I would consider that the responsibility for one of the lowest turnouts in Europe, I think only in Slovakia, I think I was lower, Czech Republic, and for this whole story that suppressed EU as an opportunity and made it only sort of a formal membership. It's the whole political elite, but represented especially by one guy. His name is Václav Klaus, that was in the position to tell, to translate the story, and he translated it and actually projected it into society as something that's some kind of a necessary bad or evil, a necessary evil. And therefore, if you have a political elite or political, let's say, landscape that is telling to people for 346 days in a year bad things about Brussels, or not speaking about Brussels at all, and then on the 365th day you tell people to go and enthusiastically vote for the European in the European election, of course people won't do anything like that. So I mean, this will not change from time to time, but what I think is a good result of it is that at least part of the society took, for the first time, at least in the Czech history, the European election as something really political. There were debates, many more than in the previous election, debating things that are of political importance, such as Ukraine, security, even Europe. It doesn't have to do much with the European Parliament, because it doesn't decide on it if we join or not, but still, people got politicized in a way much more than the previous years, which I'm happy about, and I think that's definitely a step forward.
The Germans are quite more interested, I would say, in the topic of Europe. Have you been somehow surprised by the vote generally, Mr. Schwennicke?
Yeah, thanks as well for the invitation. Yes, I was not just surprised, to be honest, I was shocked. And I was even more shocked by the fact that in these eastern countries the participation of the electorate was so low, even more shocked than by the outcome that in all the countries that have problems, the extreme parties got a lot of votes. So for me, the first impact was more shocking than the second. And now for me, coming here, it's already worth it, because I get an impression or an idea why that could happen, and that sounds already better than I thought. So as far as I understood you right, your people said, okay, well, we want to get in there, it's good to be part of Europe again, we feel safe and cozy in there, we've got the NATO as well, and that's it, mission accomplished. That's, for me, it sounds like one of the better explanations for this reluctance your people showed in the elections. First point. Second, I think you're brave and you're right to say as the leader of a party, I'll go to Brussels, or at least I want to go there, or to Strasbourg. Because in Germany we have a saying, if you have a granddad, send him to Brussels. And in fact many of your green friends here in Germany did so, and sent all the problematic cases, retired people or people with problems, sent to Brussels and to Strasbourg. That's it. Maybe they can come back after 5 or 10 years or so, as Cem Özdemir, for example. And that's not the right approach towards Europe and the Parliament there. So I really appreciate you telling us, I'm the #1 of the Greens in the Czech Republic and I want to go there. I failed, but I tried. And that for me is already two good informations. First, your approach, and second, these countries were so reluctant using their right to vote because they're quite happy with Europe.
Yeah, exactly, like one of the polls made by in Poland showed that actually, although polls actually only 22% went to voting, but still we are very, very happy about our being in Europe, so it actually seems like all the hopes that we had and all the challenges maybe they were fulfilled, maybe not. But my question is to you, is from this Western perspective, how do you see this, well, if I can call it ignorance, or maybe not, but if Eastern Europe is not interested, how do you see the possibility to build any common interest? Like, is it still possible?
Well, I can't give you a precise answer to that. If I could, I'd be a political wizard. honestly, I can't answer that question. But as I said to Mash before, I was shocked on Sunday because I know exactly what all the old members of the European Union had to tolerate, had to stand, to tell their people, well, listen, this enlargement is a good thing. And the people in Germany and in France and elsewhere, they weren't so delighted about it. Not all of them, to put it mildly. Yeah? And now you see these results and you just think, well, that's what we did it for. So that's why I really appreciate the explanation of my colleague to my right here. We are happy to be part of you.
Well, point of view from Hungary, another quite important country from the East. It shows, I mean, the results are quite similar as in the year 2009. It's with the share of the parties. It's also the point with the people being interested for the vote. I mean, is Hungary different than in this year 2009, or is the country still the same? I mean, there were some populists voted for the parliament, but the main government party gained more than half of the votes, so it seems like the people are quite satisfied with the government. At least there was like 28% of the participation in the vote, so that's clearly higher score than in the Czechs. But I mean, for you, what's the message from the election?
Well, you invited me to take part in a discussion that is called 10 years of EU25 is a bigger Europe, a better place for life. So this is sort of the first question that I have to think over before I'm getting into some sort of political analysis of, I'm not a politologist, to analyze scrutins and votes. But I'm thinking of is life better in a bigger Europe or not. So there's lots of questions that arise by this, by the sentence itself. Because what do you mean by Europe? What do you mean by bigger Europe? Certainly, in consequence of the sentence, I don't think that sort of Europe became bigger, because I don't see that the continent has gained some territory. It is the same continent that it has been for the last 2,000 years. Or even more. So I don't think that that it means that if we speak about Europe, then it is not really the Europe I'm thinking of, but we speak about the European Union. So one has to sort of rethink the question, is the bigger European Union a better place for life? So that would be sort of the real question. I have to say that I am born 1955, and I have spent most of my life in the Cold War. And of course, during the Cold War, we were striving very much to become a part of the European Union. So the European, or this European, which was not European Union at the time, don't let me tell all the story from the coal and steel union to the European Union, but as you just mentioned, to be a part of the West, of this West and the system, the non-communist system, democratic, market-oriented, etc. system. And so we were striving for that, of course, and in 1989, you know more or less the story, there was this historical change. And the historical chance as well for Hungary. I'm speaking now for Hungary, and I'm speaking now for Hungary, but as well for our colleagues in a bracket, to say that let's think as well about the location, if it's Eastern Europe or Central Europe that we're talking about. I would suggest more taking this into in Central, Eastern Central Europe. Our countries are on the other hand in association that is another political question. Okay, so we after, if I was in Europe before 1989, and I think I wasn't, then I have to say that after 1989 it was a very thrilling place that became Europe for us. The place, Hungary, the changes, and the possibility to be a part of Europe. And we made a long way till 2004, when we became members of the European Union with a big, very big enthusiasm. But till we got there, it was a very difficult time, and we are looking back to this time in Hungary with lots of deception. Because we thought that we are nearly in Europe. And then suddenly it turned out that we built some democratic institutions and etc. But in a sense, the majority, the growing majority of the people had the impression that we don't gain anything or relief from this change. This is of course some part of illusion, because we gain some democratic rights, of course, the free market system opened up possibilities. But arriving, now let's make a jump, arriving into the European Union, after 10 years of presence in the European Union, we have to consider that in Hungary more than 3 million people live under the level of poverty. So 3 to 4 million people in Hungary are poor, very poor, or they consider themselves very poor. So this makes a certain social atmosphere in Hungary, that where you make the final, the final calculation, is the bigger Europe a better place for us, where you can get very different answers for it. Certainly there is a certain social strata which will say, for me the bigger Europe is very good, because he will look in his pocket and he will count how good it is. But the growing number of people say, no, we don't understand why we are in this European Union, because we don't feel why we are, if you want, why we are in this, what this new system bring to us, because we have real problems in our social life, in our everyday material life. And I only wanted to tell you this context of, I'm not now talking about the elections, but this is the context how, if you think of Hungary, you have to think first this context in order to start to understand what is going on about our feelings about the bigger European Union.
I'm sorry, but I see a certain contradiction between what you just said about the Czech Republic and you mentioned about Hungary. I mean, I'm not too deep into Hungarian economy and neither in the economy of the Czech Republic, but you just said economically it was a success story. Even though people didn't go to the elections and said, thank you Europe, they didn't. And you just said people had the impression in your home country that they didn't gain anything from Europe. So in this case, Europe helped economically, and the effect, the outcome, is the same as in Hungary, where you or your people, or many of them, the poor people, got the impression it didn't help us at all. The result is the same. Here as there, they don't have anything to do with Europe, or not enough people have to. So I asked myself, especially in the situation we're in now, seeing what Putin has done with Ukraine.
I don't see now the contradiction that you bring up. This is what I don't understand. Yes. What was the contradiction that you?
The colleague to my right just said.
The story of the Czechs in the eyes of Mr. Liška was that we gained a lot of economical success with the entering of the EU. You say at the same time that 10 years after entering of the EU, you have 3 million people under the level of poverty, what means economically big problems.
Yeah.
So this is like a different point of view.
It is different stories, but they don't contradict. They are different stories.
The same outcome.
Yeah, well,
what is the same outcome?
Disinterest in Europe.
No, we had much more participation this time.
Almost 30%.
That is to say, as compared,
it's still much lower below the European average, let's say.
Okay, but still
it was 43, but in Germany it was even higher. I mean, this was an interesting point about the understanding to the Euro world. I just pick a few numbers about the Czechs. So there was a big poll, a big survey among the Czech citizens, actually Czech and Slovak citizens, about the understanding to what European Union mean at all, what do the people sitting in Brussels actually do, what's their work. And I mean the numbers are shocking, not too many shocks today, but actually this was surprising for me because 80% of the Czechs say that they don't actually understand what's going on there in Brussels, what's the politics about. And we can go even further. How many Czechs are able to name at least one European delegate from the country? How many people? Just 1/3. Just 1/3 of the Czechs. 2/3 of the Czechs don't know one single delegate sitting in the Brussels. Why should they vote then if they even don't know who is there? So that's just about the understanding. And the sociologists asked the people, what's the reason? I mean, why aren't you more interested in this? And then we are getting into a much more complicated scale of answers. But it looks like that the Brussels is really quite far away from this everyday politics we have in Czechs there. Ondřej Liška wants to add something.
Well, I would maybe add some of the reasons that I consider why people are disinterested in Europe. First, it's a general disinterest and distrust to politics and state. I mean, the big difference of the West and East is still between the EU 15 and EU 10 is that there is much lower trust towards the state from society. So that is the first thing. In Germany, you also call it this Politikverdrossenheit, right? Secondly, if people have their interests, it's natural. You know, why not to call them interests? If they don't see any interest in there, why should they be interested? So if there's nothing controversial on their interest, so why should they go and vote? Because with your vote, you differentiate. Why should you differentiate something that's completely indifferent? I tried very much to bring in, for example, the Ukraine issue into the political campaign. Partly, I think we managed, but we managed only among people that were like high education city, like urban liberals, very low or very small group of people. For the rest of the country, I mean, they think it's very far and just doesn't. It has no links to us in terms of security or energy or whatever. So, and the third reason is, and that is, I think, much deeper. It goes much deeper than we think. There is a total lack of civic education. People just do not know what are civic virtues in terms of being a fully participating or actively participating citizen. This is not being taught at schools at all. What we call this public or civic education at schools, it's very, I mean, it's quite useless because the kids learn or pupils learn the institutional facts about Czech Republic, institutional facts about the European Union, but they do not know or they do not learn where politics actually emerges from. And politics emerges from a conflict. And if you're not aware of a conflict, why should you be politicized by the European Union? So I think these three reasons are, to my mind, the most important ones.
I think you were mentioning here a very important problem, but also we are touching here the problem of a big disappointment. And I think that a big group of disappointed people were the young people among the last years. I will bring here some points and some percent from Poland, from my homeland. Almost 50%, actually more than 50% of young people between their 18th and 25 decided to vote for the right and conservative parties this time in Poland. And actually, what can I feel in this disappointed Erasmus generation, which I'm also part of? Yes, I can feel the disappointment, the anger is very, very big. And maybe the question to Mr. Schwennicke, I would like to ask you if there is any possibility for any solutions in this new creation of the European Parliament. Are there people who can somehow go towards the expectations of the young people and maybe also change something in this educational level?
Fortunately, I met many young students just several weeks ago from Erasmus program, and they were really keen on Europe. So there is still enthusiasm in these young people, in some of them from Poland, by the way. Yeah, we always come back to the one question: what is the convincing idea of Europe? It was in what you said, I don't have it, but I know that I spent really so many conversations, public conversations with people about Europe, and I'm a Europhile. Yeah? And I tried to convince them. I said, listen, peace is important. And they were bored and said, yes, peace, I know peace, but I mean, we have peace for 50 years now, so what else? But now the momentum was that Russia and Putin invaded in Ukraine, and I thought, and I think in Germany that helped, and I would think in Poland, for example, it should help even more to think about it again, that people thought, maybe it's not that bad, this idea of Europe, that, for example, Germany doesn't invade in Alsace, or Denmark claims for some regions in Schleswig-Holstein. Maybe it's not that bad. That helped. That was really the good impact of this horrible things going on in Ukraine. And on the other hand, yes, you're right. I think as long as elections don't have a face and are as complex as they are, or the system is as complex as it is in the European Parliament or the European system itself as a whole, it's hard to get people to the election. Here in Germany, this time it worked that there were two candidates, very popular candidates, one German candidate and the other one, Jean-Claude Juncker, is also very well known. He's more or less German. So that, I think, at least that was my impression in my private surrounding, that helped a lot getting people to the polls. But to come back to your question, I can't give you the idea for Europe. I think this is the idea. It's so simple and it's so boring, but it's peace and stability, and that's what it's all about, and that's what it's worth it to work for.
I would maybe mention just it's just a tweet, nothing more. One tweet which came from Garry Kasparov, the former chess world champion, who is kind of a person a bit critical against Kremlin and against Russia. And he tweeted just after the election results appeared. It's a luxury of a Western free world to be bored with a vote. To have a peace is actually nothing. To fight for the peace is everything. Mentioning also the vote in the Ukraine, where the participation was, of course, much higher. I mean, Mr. Togay, when we talk about this idea of what's actually Europe about, with this peace rhetoric, I mean, does it even work somehow? Or where to search for this, let's say, Europe search also for the European narrative, we have heard. That's a project of the European Commission, that they would like to...
Which I find completely wrong.
Yeah, they would like even to
Yes,
ask the people to find a new narrative. I mean, when we are talking about some common European idea, is the peace the one, or what else could it be?
Look, it's evident that the European peace framework is a very relevant and basic frame of the European idea. And this is something really that one should, it is unquestionable, that is something you can, it is proven, it is a base of the European Union, and I think it is something to maintain, there is no question about it. It's another question if the elections are about peace or not peace. Certainly they are not about this question. It's not the question put if Europe, should remain sort of in the peace framework or not in the peace framework. This is not a question put to the election. And then the question comes, but what is put into the question of the elections? What options or political option, because there is something that you more or less understand about the elections. It's on the X of Europe yes or Europe no. Like these are the two sort of extremes of it, and between the two you say, okay, no, but, yes, but, and the things are more or less, but there are no, me as a European voter, I don't see any sort of political perspectives or political visions for Europe that are sort of competing with each other, and they are relevant for my personal, social, economic, etc. life. So I think because this does not work really in this way. I'm not dissatisfied anyhow with the outcome of these last elections. I don't share the deception of when they say there is too much Eurosceptical votes. Eurocritical votes that got the votes, because this proves that people are interested in this European Union, even if they are critical about it. So it doesn't mean that they, those who went to vote. So these are people who question the European Union. I think that is okay to question the European Union, because if we have such an endeavor after 2,000 years of European history to make the utopia, to integrate these histories, different histories.
Do you see it like an utopia?
Yes, I see it like an utopia. Certainly, I see it as an utopia, but because it has some utopic, utopic perspectives, like after to integrate, to have this, but sometimes the utopia is not a bad thing. Utopia might be a motivation to go forward. But on the other hand, utopia has to be criticized, because if you are not criticizing utopias, then you can get into grotesques. We have lived utopias. I have lived in utopia, where there was no possibility to criticize the utopia, and it became a grotesque. It did not become the outcome that they were sort of dreaming of. So I think it's very important that people criticize and question the raison d'être of the European Union.
At the same time, you don't see a topic which would connect the people as a common European topic instead of the peace question.
A common European topic, the topics are always the same. It's economy, social security, the security of life, perspective, of tomorrow. These are, I mean, if you are in a country and you are going to vote, then you are not referring to some bigger idea that you will vote for or against or whatever. You are voting for the perspective of your children. You are voting for your personal perspective. You are voting for education and things like that. These very simple things you are voting for. You're not voting for ideologies.
I guess that's a very, very good question. I think that Tomasz is going here direction, like a general idea, general values that somehow bind the European, the European community of the countries. Because I think that nowadays Europe looks like a cultural melting pot, and also these elections showed the success of the nationalist parties, also xenophobic in a way, and very rightist. It also showed that this might be a reaction on, for example, growing number of the immigrants in Europe, and a contradiction towards the immigration policy. So I think that in this perspective, the question on the common European values, are we speaking here about, it's not surely about religion, for example, Judeo-Christian background, but what is the common value that can still be something which we can all attach, even if we have this very, very different points of views?
Mr. Schwennicke wanted to say something. I guess he has at least one or two of those.
I'd like, first of all, I agree with you. The good outcome of this election is that this was an honest election. Now the politicians can really see what the challenge is, and I was a little concerned today when I went to a background meeting with Volker Kauder. Maybe he's not the most not the biggest thinker or intellectual in the political scene, but I was very concerned that he was just interested in whether the EVP, means the Conservatives, will get the chief post or not, and what this result means for the CSU, for the sister party from Bavaria. And I thought, listen, that is not these are not the main topics as an outcome of this election. That I wanted to add, I agree, this is a wake-up call, and the politicians, the European politicians now have to understand this wake-up call. May I try to add one topic that could be a reason to build Europe, a strong Europe. I mean, Hungary, the Czech Republic, even Germany, they're just too small. Economically too small to compete with other regions, and nobody can tell me that going back into nationalism can be an answer to the challenges of this globalized world. It sounds trivial, but it's true. It's so true, and yes, we have a lot of problems, and we are this melting pot, as you just put it. But anyone should see that we can't. Nobody of us can do it alone. Not France, not Germany, not Hungary, and not the Czech Republic. So this should be another reason to say, listen, there are quite strong powers out there, more or just friendly, and they have different values, not the same democratic tradition as we have. And maybe it's a good thing to go in this challenge together and not everybody on his own.
And if I may add here, so I agree, but of course the question is, if you are in an association, then I think it is good if each and every of us has a strong base for itself, has a strong standing for itself, a strong opinion for itself, a strong way as well, and sort of taking his own sword into his own hands, in order that when we get into an association, that we are standing strong together. That is to say, I think it is important that each and every that if there is a tendency of integration, there must be always a tendency of the strengthening of sovereignty at the same time. If we get into a marriage, it is not that we give up our identities. It is not, okay. Are you married? Yes, I'm married. I'm married and I've been married for 30 years. And so it is not that we give up our identities. We are together in order to strengthen our own identities as well, and the common identity. So I think that it is very, very difficult one must wait and see the dynamics of the two dynamics. So going towards trying to make something together and being strong there out in the world, if you want so, yes, to be competitive, but at the same time to be strong on our own as well. So this is, I want to finish it because it's an important thought for Hungary. The Hungarian experience was that we had sort of thought that we enter the European Union and we take over not only the European Union, but we get rid of communism, socialism, whatever, and we take over the capital, and then everything will work out fine. But what worked out fine, I exaggerate now, is not, of course, for the capital. It worked out fine, but not for the people. And so if the people, in a sense or another, try to get back a certain amount of sovereignty to, sort of defend themselves and will build up themselves, then we will get, then Hungary can get, for example, a bit stronger in order to find its place in the European Union. So this is one,
I accept your metaphor with marriage.
Okay.
I accept your claim for identity as long as it's not an excuse to fall back to nationalism.
Yeah, but this works. Fall back to nationalism is, of course, everything has shaped parts. So, everything that you do has a shadow as well.
To understand, that's not your wish to fall back to the national states. Your wish to empower some other people, but to remain the part of this marriage.
I don't know what it means to fall back to the national state.
There are even countries who have nice plans to exit the Union. So that could be the way.
No, but everybody has the right as well to sort of question an association. The strength of an association is not that you cannot question the association. The strength of an association is if you have proposals in the association that is dynamic enough that people say, yes, we want to stay in this association because this is something that brings us something.
Yes,
it's not
not to forget it, when I was thinking about whom to invite and my mind came to the name of Mr. Schwennicke, there was also one reason, because right in this moment appeared this issue of the magazine which is published by Mr. Schwennicke's team. And the 10 years, the golden issue, it means firstly 10 years of Cicero generally, like a magazine, but it comes also at the same moment of the 10 years of the enlarged Europe. And actually there is a nice article about Europe, stressing 10 great things or benefits we have from Europe. So maybe this is also the way when we are asking about what could bound the countries. I recommend you to read it. It's next to the democracy or freedom. There are really a nice thing from everyday life, even being user-friendly. The Europe helps in everyday life. Just maybe to let it go. We will maybe get it back then. But this is one of the points came to my mind. But Ondřej Liška wanted to add something to this marriage and maybe divorce possibly.
I wouldn't go much into the family issues, but what I was thinking of was following. you can say a lot of things on Europe. You know, you can speak on the legal basis, you can speak on the narratives, you can speak on values, but it's always hard with values because you can write anything into the constitution on values, but if you don't practice them, then they become empty notions. So, which is very often the case. But I wanted to say that I think the low turnout and disinterest of the 10 new member states, societies, is also linked with the fact that Europe is being considered as a sort of state structure, suprastate but state structure. It has similar mechanisms. We often speak on EU laws. We speak on various instruments that they use that are being used also on the state level, on the national state level. And there is this huge and deep distrust towards the state and a bad experience because if you see, and I think it's maybe, I don't know if it's the case in Hungary, but definitely Slovakia, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, people just don't rely on the state too much because the state as a structure has failed. It's been considered as a sort of evil before 1989. And there was this huge euphoric boom in the beginning 90s that completely restructured the societies, but then later on, 10 years later, it's not functioning yet in the way that people would like to expect. In terms of corruption, in terms of not being transparent in many ways, not being able to transfer people's interest, societal interest into policies. So the politicians change, but the policies don't. Whatever government rules, actually. And therefore, EU has become part of that. What is the closest experience most people have with EU? It's the buildings, it's the infrastructure built from the EU funds, from the structural funds. And there are so many cases of corruption and misuse of the funds. Actually, the picture is even worse in the media and in the society than it actually really is. But still, it's being linked with that. So, I think the major homework would be done for the European integration if the national governments do their homework. Because there is no EU law that is passed without the consent of the member states. Each member state has a parliament, and in the parliament there's a European committee that actually has to give mandates to their governments and give position to all laws that are coming from Brussels. But before they come from Brussels, they are being agreed on the local level. But most politicians in the East, they just don't care about until it's being decided in Brussels at the very end of the third reading or in the council, and then they bring it back and say, oh, you know, come on, the bad Brussels, the evil Brussels again is imposing on us this and that. I mean, this is a question of democratic deficit, but not on the European level primarily. I think it's the member states. And I speak more of the new member states than Germany, Finland, etc. because the European scrutiny, the legal scrutiny of the European legislation is being done at a much advanced level in the Western countries than in the East.
And you're so right, this blame game towards Brussels is so easy and so primitive in the end. And I just spoke about the meeting with Volker Kauder today, and he said, furious, well, he comes from Baden-Württemberg, and we have, what is in English, Naturschutzgebiet, a reservation, natural protectorate at the Donau or somewhere, and there were some European officials coming and telling me what to do with this here with this region. And
it's a green topic. I mean,
yeah,
they're smiling. Protection of nature.
Sorry, that law, the flora, fauna, habitat, that was in the interest of that was coming from Germany. So the German government at the time wanted to have this regulation done in Brussels, and that is exactly the point. It's so easy to blame Brussels for the politics you did yourself in your home country. And I want to add one thing as well. I mean, people have a good sense for what is okay and what's not. And there was exaggerated reporting on cucumbers and olive oil on tables in restaurants and so on. But what is true, there is too much regulation and there are too many officials in Brussels. Sorry to say, it's 30,000. Once you went there, we did an interview with one of the commissioners there. If you see this city in a city, you can literally feel this is just too much. Here are too many officials. And if anybody says, well, listen, it's 30,000, and Hamburg, for example, has as well 30,000 civil workers for Hamburg. Then we have the Müllabfuhr, so the garbage people, you have the police and everything in these 30,000. It's just too much. And we once sent, Edmund Stoiber, a former Bavarian prime minister, was once sent to Brussels to cut down bureaucracy. And the first thing he did was getting staff for his task, and then we never heard anything again of him. So there really, people have a good sense for what's okay and what's not, and that is not okay.
There was a slogan connected to this vote, this time it's different. I mean, there were many points why should it be different, because of those Spitzenkandidaten, which is actually the European, new European word coming from Germany, so congratulations for that. But the main point actually was the Ukraine. And as Ondřej Liška mentioned, he actually went to Ukraine during the campaign. He tweeted and posted from Kiev, even Donetsk, and he tried to build this topic somehow like a part of the campaign. As you said, you maybe you've partly succeeded, partly not. I mean, why haven't it worked somehow, this topic? I mean, because we journalists were wrong, thinking that this would be the moment to boost the participation, to wake up the people that they should care about a stronger Europe.
Yeah, because I'm a typical reader, right? I'm a typical reader of Respect, so we both thought it's the issue, but it was not. And you have, I don't know how many, almost 100 readers, 100,000 readers, 100,000, but that is approximately what the Greens numbers are, right? So I don't say that every reader of yours is a Green voter, but I mean that's the impact we have on society and in a 10 million nation. So, well, I would have gone to Ukraine, the Russian-Ukrainian border, even if there were no European elections. I went there because I deeply believe that as a Green politician, we should be there where things happen that are of democratic nature. And that is exactly where things happen. And I went there to warn, to come back and warn that EU should play a much stronger role in there to prevent the escalation of the conflict, and EU did not. And my thought was it's because of the European election, or paradoxically, because if you say something, what was to be said on Ukraine, that Europe should be engaged there, but in what sense? But if you even just send out the sentence of your mouth, and you are Angela Merkel or François Hollande, then immediately the left wing in your party and the left wing will immediately tells you, oh, you are dragging us to war, you know? And that nobody wanted to say that, and nobody wanted to be in such a situation just 3 weeks ahead of the European election to lose votes. Because there, the European leaders failed, because they put ahead their interest to be able to appoint the President of the Commission and have a stronger position in the Parliament than to be frank with their voters and their society and say, yes, we as Europe have instruments to play a role there. For example, to send observers. I mean, the time when I was there, these, I don't know, 13 million people stripe of Ukraine on the border with Russia, there were literally 30 observers of OSCE. They had 3 cars. So they jumped into the car and they went where they thought something happened. And when then armed guy tell them, you don't pass this way. So they stopped, they turned up and went back to the hotel. So what could they observe? So
if they don't get arrested, maybe.
Yeah, then, well, someone got arrested. I mean, that's too weak. You know, the EU didn't even use the OSCE platform, having Russia as a member of it, to strengthen its presence as observers there. So I don't want to get too much into this issue, but I wanted to say that when was a better time to talk of energy independence of Russia? I mean, just Czech Republic sends 153 million crowns a day to the Russian bank account for oil and gas. For 143 million crowns, you buy 4 tanks T4, you know, in Russia. So we are basically sending weapons there to invade Ukraine. I mean, the issue number 1 is to become independent, energy-wise, to be able to promote the democratic and human rights-based foreign policy and support democratic development in the close neighborhood of Europe. If you are independent on autocratic regimes like this, of course you are not free to tell them the truth and confront them with that. And I think the European elections were truly about that, but there was nobody to translate it to people, or not brave enough.
Maybe if we move a bit more eastern, Mr. Tolga, what's your reading of this topic resonating in the Hungarian society? What are the effects of what's going on in Ukraine and Hungary?
But I cannot speak for the whole country. But certainly there is, what I observe is, of course, I'm observing and looking for how the Hungarian government is sort of, what is its reaction. And I noticed that there is a certain prudence about which standing to take. There are different reasons for that, historical reasons and reasons of, for example, we have an important Hungarian minority in the Ukraine. The Hungarian government has a policy of sort of opening policy towards Russia, trying to have economic ties with Russia. The Hungarian government has just made a very important deal about the about opening of a second nuclear part of our nuclear center in Hungary, and so I think there is some sort of prudence, but as I understood that the Prime Minister took a very strong stand recently as to the common European action concerning the Ukraine. So this is a sort of one has the impression that he is prudent, but goes with the European decision. What I was wondering about the Ukraine is, of course, I have some trouble as far as the analysis of the Ukrainian situation that I can read in the media. It is true that in these last days or last weeks there are some attempts sort of to analyze the Ukrainian situation and the Russian and the very complicated Russian-Ukrainian relation from a little bit of different point of views. That is to say, not to take one generalized point of view that was a tendency at the beginning. Like what is going on in Ukraine, we have an answer for that, we understand it in this way, and what is going on from Russia is the opposite of it, so it's sort of black and white situation was sort of addressed. But as this is a very dangerous situation, it is not an easy thing, it is a big, Ukraine, Russia, it is not, let me say, it's not Hungary. I mean,
not even Czech Republic.
Not even Czech Republic. I mean, about Hungary you can write things in a newspaper, you write this or that, nothing special will happen. But if you run, and you don't have to look behind the motivations, but in a very complicated affair like Russia, you have to try to look for what are the explanations. I have noticed that, for example, at the beginning of the crisis, the journalists, one had the impression the journalists did not give you enough information about what is the reason of the crisis. You did not understand that there is, in this association contract that was not signed by Yanukovych, that there is point 7 is about military association between Europe and Ukraine. So, okay, if you are not told that there are these type of points within a contract, you don't understand why, I don't know, Putin, gets nervous to tell it simply, So that is I think that the European, not even Europe, but even America was very, very quickly present and present on the spot. I think that you can put some questions on how the Ukrainian crisis was dealt.
That's actually a huge discussion here in the German media. I mean, on Friday I heard to many journalists talking about whether they even can somehow inform about the Ukraine when they haven't been there, or one was there just 2 times and maybe even didn't read all the sources. I mean, it looks like the journalists are a bit afraid now to give an explanation to the situation, because there are so many people attacking the black and white point of views. What's going on then?
I'm not sure whether you're right or not. I mean, there can always be a better information of an audience, quite obviously. And of course you're right. The relation between Ukraine and Russia is complex. There are even former German chancellors who doubt that Ukraine is a state itself. There were, of course, certainly made many faults of NATO and the European Union as well. But there is, for me at least, not a single good reason for a country to invade a peninsula. So I don't have to know everything about the complex history between Russia and Ukraine. I don't have to know exactly what went wrong when the European Commission went to Ukraine, or what NATO did here or there. It doesn't change anything that nobody is allowed just to invade a peninsula. And that is exactly the difference German former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder didn't make when he said, well, we broke the law as well when we bombed Serbia. I mean, that wasn't done to get the territory, but this one was an aggression to gain the territory, and there is I accept no reason at all to do that. Sorry.
Can I add something, please? I'm totally disappointed about the discussion on Ukraine in the Czech society. I mean, Putin's regime and Putin himself managed to colonize the brains of Europeans in a way that is completely incredible. And of course, we could it's really bizarre and it's shocking. It's also when we talk about the European Union and the common narrative, etc., because there you see how deeply rooted the preoccupations and prejudices actually are, and how easy it is to work with them once you are really concentrating on a target like Putin. Secondly, I was very disappointed as a Central European citizen, a Czech citizen, by the debate in Germany. I was thinking, oh my God, what happened to the democratic Germany? Is it because I have many friends here in Germany, and when we talked on Ukraine, Russia, they were sort of excusing Putin for that. I was saying, my God, what's happening here? And the third thing I wanted to mention was the latest poster of Martin Schulz of Schulz, the Social Democrat, saying, vote for the Social Democrats if you want a German president of the Commission. I was almost throwing up, because that is exactly like the Social Democrats had a full mouth of European democracy, but when it comes to a vote and to get this margin, then it's becoming again a national thing. So then I was very much disappointed, and I don't want to pick up on Germany. I think that's the case of many European countries. I was very happy about Wilders' result, but then again, link it back to Ukraine. Many people who are hesitant to say, let's support Ukraine in a way with all the, let's say, things we could criticize, but you have to take sides. So. And when you discuss with them, they say, but come on, you know, the Ukrainians, they are, this whole Maidan thing, it's based on fascists and extreme right nationalists, etc. I mean, when I went there, I was shocked that the support for the far right in Ukraine is much smaller than it is a support of European citizens for far right. So why should we talk this? And I mean, media.
Which was proved by the election.
Which is completely proven. Like a presidential candidate of Jewish origin in Ukraine got more votes than all far-right nationalist candidates altogether. I mean, this shows something as well. And again, back to the civic education. I mean, there are media that actually took sides, because as a media you always take sides, even if you try to be objective, etc. So I think there are channels of sort of objective, balanced information. But people stop or become maybe less able to distinguish between what's being said on the TV and respect, written respect, etc. And there, the only thing you can do again is education. Educate them in this digital era on how should they pick channels and what are actually the character traits of the media to be able to judge what is relevant and what's not.
I think we can say that, yeah, 10 years of joining of our countries to the European Union, but also 25 years of the democracy in the region. I think it's still some more things to do in our discussion. We're surely not
more than we thought 25 years ago.
Definitely not. I would like to ask if there are any questions from our colleagues.
Let's pick up the Ukrainians still, or the question of nationalism. I mean, we haven't even noticed the numbers what the nationalists get. It's the big question what will cause. But here is the first.
Yeah, sorry for my broken English, but one question to the keyword identity. What is your restriction, or what is the restriction in your identity by Europe? Can you please tell it to me?
And how far you restricted in your Hungarian identity in the European Union? In what way you
Did I say something? I didn't say that his identity is restricted by Europe. I say only that identity is national. The identity of the national identity is one of the identities. We have lots of identities in Europe, but you know, like it is like we are national states. Europe is more or less coming together of national states now. I will not break it down into regions, etc., etc. You will have a great amount of different identities that you have. But it is coming together of national states, and the strength of Europe is these national identities that these countries have. It is the big slogan of Europe. It's unity in diversity. I mean, you have diverse historical backgrounds, you have diverse cultures, you have diverse experiences of history. You have diverse, you know, even conflicts that you had, historical conflicts. You have, you know, lots of diverse things, and these diverse things, these diverse stories, these narratives, if you want, they get together and form and try to form together one alliance, one big alliance, and this alliance is looking for its forms now. What are its borders? What are its perspectives? What are its possibilities? No, I didn't say that Europe is restricting identities.
But you see it as a
pretty
complicated
identity is strengthening. I think it is an important thing to have identity.
Yeah, you told the very good metaphor of marriage.
I would not stick to this metaphor
all
my life. But
it's really very good. And the question for me is, what is, in which point I'm restricted in my identity? I live in Berlin, I'm German, I live here since my whole life. And what is my identity? What is the problem for my identity?
You are asking me about your
identity. I'm asking myself now.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not asking you, I'm asking myself. And what is the restriction in my identity? And I cannot see, if I look really, I cannot see many restrictions. But I'm from Germany. Germany is a very large country, very powerful country. In Europe, in European Union, maybe you see it with other eyes if you're from France or from Czech or from a smaller country. I was yesterday at a discussion in not Scandinavian embassy, but organized by Scandinavian embassy discussion, and there was also about identity, and we talked about the results in Great Britain and in France, and we talked, I think, nothing about Ukraine. And this is a proof for me that there are many differences also in Europe.
I mentioned here a guy, Václav Klaus, right, the Czech president, ex-president, things go, and he said once that he's very much afraid of Europe because he doesn't want the Czech identity to be melted as a sugar cube in a coffee. And he's got very powerful language because people say, okay, oh, maybe our identity is something like a sugar cube. And then, yeah, it disappears. And of course it's not, because you decide who you are. We are constructs of ourselves and of the context that we were born to, but we are not completely enslaved to it. We have also freedom of choice in that, who we want to become. And therefore I feel, as a, I come from Brno. Brno was actually half German-speaking city before World War II, or to the end of the World War II. Then there was a wonderful mixture of Jewish, Czech, Gypsy, German melting pot, as you said in the very beginning. Then this whole culture disappeared. And then the city has wounds, really deep wounds still carried from the World War II. And for me, as somebody who actually took a lot of energy to excavate all of these stories that were bound to that period of time, for me, European identity is thrilling. It's something that gives me so much more freedom to think of ourselves. But it's still, I see those who have, which I don't mean you, right? But those politicians who speak on identity in negative terms as something that is endangered or is in danger, etc. They are mostly people with such an inferiority complex themselves psychologically that you can really point out, and I think Václav Klaus is the perfect example of that. He's a man that speaks, I don't know, 5 languages. He's internationally, he actually achieved everything what he could in the Czech Republic, but he's still afraid that he's a sugar cube being melted in a coffee. I mean, this has something to do much more with his psyche than actually a political problem.
I would like to add to this something, because I think this is an important issue. I think there are different point of views on identity. And certainly there are, and it's very important that in Europe there are, or amongst us, there are people who sort of have several approaches to their identities, or have, so to say, can connect different identities, and who can sort of be on another level of identity, if you want. And there are people who consider themselves or feel that they stick to their roots and it's important for them. I don't think that we should sort of decide for one or the other option. I think there are lots of options of these identities, and that we sort of have to accept these different identities, and we don't have to, of course there will be always a conflict, and politics is instrumentalizing everything that it can find. Identity, non-identity, this the contrary of it, but we have to understand that these are different things in Europe, and not only in Europe, of course. And I think that these ideas that Europe is optioning about, that it is very important to allow the dynamics of these ideas and to keep it in the frame that is the European frame, and this is this peaceful frame of Europe.
Let's pick one more question.
I recall quite well the general discussion in the 10 member states, and particularly the Czech Republic, before entering the European Union. And one of the big issues at that time was, and it was not addressed at all today, this evening, one of the big issues was the role of the small and medium-sized member states toward the big players. And it was the very big fear that Germany and France, maybe Great Britain, United Kingdom, would really set out the rules for the game. And I always said at that time, okay, if you are not a member, you are influenced by it anyhow, but if you are a member, you can influence. And it's a strong equilibrium between the small, medium-sized member states and the large member state. Could you address this issue as well? And may I ask a second question? Are we moving in Europe, and that maybe be an answer for the overall question, are we moving from integration to renationalization?
May I answer in a provocative way? Size does not matter that much in Europe. You can see it now with Jean-Claude Juncker and Luxembourg, and it has nothing to do with the former member states and the new member states. Poland, for example, is a good example for a country being now one of the major players in Europe, because everybody knows Great Britain will never be part of core Europe, and everybody knows that France and Germany alone maybe is not enough as an engine to Europe. So as you're right, that was part of the discussion at the time. What about the little ones? But there were already before little ones and larger ones. And I can't see that Luxembourg, for example, hasn't got a loud voice in this European concert. So this is not really a question of the new members and the old members, and it's not that important. Again, size does not matter that much. Economically, yes. Politically, no.
I think that you are right that there was this threat felt by many people before we entered, but it actually disappeared. I do really not think that that is the matter of these days, that people think we are overrun by Germany and Britain, etc. Because it has been shown that, and I think that's maybe one of the very positive results of the very negativistic Czech policy in Europe, where Czechs were those who blocked a lot of things, including the fiscal pact, etc. But people felt, or they sensed from the media at least, that even if you're alone, you can reject something, and the others have to listen. Also, the referendums in Ireland and France and also in Netherlands actually show that Europe has to, try again, or at least reconsider, etc. So I think this threat is gone. But I think, and back to that identity issue, I think people are sort of non-identified with this very complex, bureaucratic, complex structure, and it's difficult to become political in a space that has no clear borders. And I think for Czechs at the moment, if I speak for Czechs now, is that they just took as a simple fact that Romania and Bulgaria became member states. But if you look what happened in Bulgaria, Romania last 2 years, the massive protests, really some almost like Maidan-like protests against governments, etc. The societies there are boiling, and there is a lot of things going on. But I mean, Czechs just don't give any interest.
As Mr. Schwennicke said, it's pretty hard.
I would like to add to this question something. The last part of the question is the question whether integration or renationalization.
That's what I wanted to pick up.
I think this is a special dialectics. So if it's like with every systematic development, if there is a tendency of integration, there is a will of integration. Of course, there will be sort of a contracurrent so to say, the antithesis of it, and then I think that again there will be made steps toward the integration. I don't think that we have to be so afraid of this pendulum that is going to and from. You have to trust, if you really want to trust the European idea, then you have to trust that these are conflicting aspects, but that might bring the thing forward. Only integration, I cannot imagine this movement of strict integration. This would be really the absurd of the utopia. Only renationalization would be, of course, sort of a dangerous development. But I think these two have to have something together.
What about the role of regions then?
I agree. Regions as well are not addressed, and the European Union is afraid of addressing this question. Because no, I have the impression, because they address I don't know what region that I have never heard before, only in the Brussels, But for example, the question of autonomy within the nation states is like hot potato, whereas this is as well as a level of possible structures that might be different and sub-national levels.
Just a brief comment, maybe. I went to the vote with my wife here in Berlin, and it was interesting to see so many people discussing what we just done. And the point was that there were actually two votes, one on the very supranational level for the Brussels, and the second on a very local level about the Tempelhof airport. And I would say it was a great combination, even for the participation at the vote. We didn't have anything like that in the Czech. Maybe if we would have like a local question added to this European vote, it would have been better.
There were several
18%.
Several places where there were local referendums as well. For example, in Prague,
did it help?
7. It helped. The turnout was much higher. The Greens were around 13%. I was happy.
We are at the end of the debate. I'm sorry for not giving possibility for more questions. Maybe if you are somehow able to catch our guests, then after the end you will succeed. But let's conclude with one question connected to this main topic about living in a better place for life. You maybe already shown us how do you see Europe as a better or worse place? I would say a better place for life. But what would be the main thing that would make our lives in Europe better in the next years? Of course, there are many European powers, but just pick up ones. What would you like to wish to happen in the next few years? What would help to become the Europe better place for life. Mr. Togay.
I think it is very important that we understand that that Europe as an the abstract Europe is not so interesting than the concrete Europe. That your neighbor, that Europe is always the other. That is the other, you have to understand the other. This is Europe. And if you understand the history of the other, the interests of the other, the politics of the other, if you understand what is going in the minds of the other, and not so much looking for like abstract ideas, what are the common European values, of course, it's very important as well. So, but if we have more interest for each other, then Europe might be an interesting place.
Mr. Schwennicke.
To create a common currency shows a lot of trust in each other, and that's what was shown when Helmut Kohl and others created the euro. And I know the euro has its problems and so on, but I still think it was the idea, the concrete thing, currency, money in your pocket, to bring Europe forward. So, when you trust in your neighbor, in your friend, in your close friend in the European Union, to build up a common currency, you should do the next step. And what could that be? In my view, a common defense policy, and in the end, a European army. So I would like to see, I know it all takes time because, as you said, there will be the pendulum goes this way and that way, but I would like to see a real European army in 10 years from now. I know that maybe that is really a vision or a utopia, but that would be a second pillar in this European house, as well as the common currency.
Ondřej Liška.
I'll be also very practical, my colleagues were. So I think it's very much related to the 10 years anniversary. Europe is still very divided. If you look at the infrastructure, you still see the Iron Curtain. It took fewer hours to get by train from Berlin to Warsaw 70 years ago than now. What we need is railway. It's a real connection between people in Europe, and I want this division to be gone. So that's my proposal.
Let's hope that in 10 years, our next meeting and everything
will be much faster here from Warsaw, and we don't have to fly them.
So thank you all for taking part in this experiment in the first political debate in a cultural center. Maybe we a bit bounded politics to the culture. I thank you all that you came, and maybe next time. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.